Sustainability Committee hearing. As usual, we're going to be breaking this hearing up into three different parts. First, we'll have a presentation on updates to the city's climate action plan. Then we'll hear a presentation on the city's community choice aggregation program. And we'll end our hearing with a presentation on proposed utility rates and fees for 2026. Before I get started, I do want to acknowledge Councilmember Beatty for being here. Thank you, Councilmember. Please let me know if you have any opening remarks. Due to scheduling, we're going to have some council members like dropping in and leaving, so I don't want folks to be confused, just trying to fit everyone in. With that being started, I want to give a little background for those who are unfamiliar with our city's climate action plan. Since 2020, the City of Columbus has been pursuing climate goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030 and being carbon neutral by 2050. The first rendition of the Climate Action Plan came to fruition in 2021 to further environmental justice and serve as a roadmap to meet climate resilience goals. This update is about renewing our commitment to achieving our community's climate goals in spite of the challenges and issues at the federal and state level. Here to present on the 2025 update is Brooke White, Climate Planning Programmer with Sustainable Columbus. Brooke, thank you for being here and thank you for the work that you're doing. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction. And I'm excited to walk you through a presentation about the update process. So as you mentioned, thank you very much. We've been implementing the Columbus Climate Action Plan since 2021. And we're now in the process of updating this plan in 2025. So we very much see this as an opportunity to renew our commitments to our joint climate action goals. And they are to reduce greenhouse gases by 45% by 2030 and to reduce them by 100% by 2050. So this is kind of a long view timeline of the life of the Climate Action Plan. We very much see this as a living document that we are keeping relevant for our communities by updating it every 5 years and revising it every 10 years. So we're going through the update process now in 2025, and then we're already looking forward to 2030 when we will be doing the full revision of the plan. And again, this creates a roadmap to achieve our climate goals of 45% reduction by 2030 and 100% reduction of greenhouse gases from the City of Columbus by 2050. To give you a bit of a view into the process that we've been going through, this is a timeline of the update process for 2025. So we kicked off the year by convening expert and leadership in order to inform the update of this plan. So each climate action within the plan itself is associated with lead and supporting agencies to support the implementation of that action. So we held a meeting with each of those lead and supporting agencies for each action one-on-one, as well as convening what we called the Climate Commitments Working Group. This was a working group comprised of one member from each of the city departments to help give feedback on each of the elements of the plan update. That continued through May, and then this summer we launched our public engagement. That focused a lot on going out and giving presentations to neighborhood area commissions, educating, hearing their concerns, answering their questions, as well as giving access, letting folks know about a climate action survey that we put out. So we also put this out through social media, and we were looking to hear from the public about how their lives are already being impacted by the effects of climate change in their everyday lives, as well as how they think we should prioritize our work amongst the climate actions that we have within the plan. We started drafting this updated plan in September. We're still in the drafting process, and we're looking forward to producing a finalized plan by February of 2026. So this gives you a little bit of a flavor of what's in the plan. So we have the sections of the plan here, as well as the strategies that underpin those sections. This plan both covers the community as a whole, as well as covering our municipal operations. So we're walking in the walk, not just talking the talk, but we're also working hand in hand with community and with partners to implement this across the city. So the plan includes actions that both help our communities prepare for the impacts of climate change, things like hotter temperatures, flooding, droughts, as well as actions that help us reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases from within the city. So being part of the solution to reduce the impacts of climate change globally. So as I mentioned, we are refreshing the plan. We're not changing the structure of the plan at this time to give us greater continuity in our work, but we are updating it to reflect the current landscape across our city, the current opportunities. We are not backing down on our ambition. We are assessing the challenges, and we are assessing where we can lean in for most impact, though. So throughout our plan, I'll kind of go through some of the ways that we're updating the plan, what we're including in the document. This is challenging to see. We wanted to make sure that we're sharing the progress and the successes that we've seen across the city and other organizations and within the city itself. And so the reason this is hard to see is because there's been a lot of success. There's been a lot of movement. I think one of the really big ways that we've seen success is building a culture of sustainability within city operations, as well as really being a leader, leading the way for other organizations and for residents within the city. So things like building a pipeline to careers in renewable energy, green jobs through the Empower program, building financial solutions through the Columbus Region Green Fund, and really thinking a lot about the two major sources of greenhouse gases from the city, which are transportation and energy use in buildings. So really leaning hard with the Clean Energy Columbus program that we'll hear about in a bit. That's been really heavy hitting in terms of reducing our emissions, and looking strongly at commercial buildings, how we can help them assess their use of energy and reduce it. Through the benchmarking programming and building performance standards that are coming in the future. In terms of transportation, the combo of Zone In with Link Us and the Bike Plus plan are really going to help us target a very challenging source of greenhouse gas emissions in terms of transportation. We're also highlighting the benefits that we're bringing to communities. Oftentimes, climate action is kind of a co-benefit of supporting the quality of lives of our residents. So two really great examples of this are the program to create the first net zero neighborhood in American Addition. So we have the innovation team working to consider how we're moving this forward, very much co-creating it with residents. As well as the low to moderate income solar pilot project, where we had the opportunity to put solar arrays on 17 households. And I think these are really important in terms of reducing energy burden, which can affect housing stability, a key goal for this city overall. So where do we lean in? We understand there are challenges, but we also have opportunities. 3 areas where we're looking to lean in and focus on in this update are residential energy efficiency. So each of these areas already has momentum. So we're building on pre-existing programs, but leaning in harder. Energy efficiency makes huge sense in terms of climate action. The technology is available. It's well within financial reach of supporting this work, and it also underpins the goals and priorities of the city strategic plan, so including housing stability from residential energy efficiency, making sure that folks can pay their energy bills and stay in their homes. We're also thinking about leaning in on commercial energy efficiency. So this really helps to align the effort of businesses with the effort that we're focusing on for residential and municipal energy efficiency. And it expands on the Columbus Region Green Fund, as well as our work in benchmarking and building performance standards that I mentioned before. The urban tree canopy is really very key and important. This is one of the items that residents highlighted within the survey itself. It helps keep us cool. We have a 14-degree difference in heat on really hot summer days between different neighborhoods across the city. So this helps keep people cool. And in the updated plan, we're making sure to also acknowledge the benefits that trees play in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions. They draw it down and store it within the trees themselves. So making sure we give a full focus on the benefit of those and building on the urban forestry master plan that we already have. Finally, I wanted to mention that we're not operating in a vacuum. We actually have a regional climate action plan that is being developed right now. I'm helping to support that. So we received federal funding in 2023 to create the Central Ohio Climate Action Plan, and this covers 10 counties within the Central Ohio region. It's the full Columbus metropolitan statistical area. And so this is created through a partnership with the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, Power a Clean Future Ohio, Impact Community Action, and the Ohio State University. So really a powerful partnership to create this plan. And we recognize the strength in aligning our City of Columbus plan with this regional plan. And so the two different plans have different interim goals. Ours is 45% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2030. The Central Ohio Climate Action Plan has an interim target out in 2035 because it's being created right now, and that's a 50% reduction, though we share a joint target in 2050 of 100% reduction. And so we're building in and aligning in this new updated plan to include that 50% greenhouse gas reduction target in the Columbus Climate Action Plan as well, and making sure that we're stepping up and serving as, at the forefront of sustainability as we are for all other Central Ohio communities. Thank you. Definitely keep your eye out for news about the final plan coming out in February of 2026.
Well, Brooke, I appreciate you kind of walking us through that and showing us the process. I have a couple questions. I know we have not finalized it, right? So some of the answers we might not have available. But I did want to kind of just dive in a little bit to what you presented. Also want to acknowledge Council President Hardin for being here. Thank you for joining us for today's hearing. You talked a little bit about the feedback that you've already seen in the engagement process, one being around trees. I'm the Lorax of council, so obviously care about trees. I want to ask a little bit more about that, but was there additional feedback in that engagement process that kind of rose to the top, that kind of highlighted specific things residents were looking for?
Yeah, so I think one thing that was exciting was the ability to ask about how people are feeling the effects of climate change within their lives. And we really heard a lot from folks about heat in the summers, as well as warmer winters, not seeing as much snow cover, seeing much milder winters, and some of the problems that come with pests like mosquitoes from that, as well as poor air quality. I think folks really, paid attention when we had some of the wildfires up in Canada and we received some of the smoke down here, so other kind of indirect impacts of climate change. So people are definitely feeling the effects. And in terms of the priorities they wanted us to take on, tree canopy, energy efficiency in homes and businesses, and recycling programs. Good access to the recycling programs were among the top.
Well, I love that. That rings true to what my office has been working on this year and what we look to do in 26. So it's really exciting to kind of have that alignment. I want to go back to trees, though. And I understand the hope and intention of maintaining our tree canopy going forward. I know the mayor just put out his budget today. I'm curious if you know if there are planned financial investments for this expansion.
Okay. So I don't know that we have particular budget allocation information in front of us. I did see that also right as I was walking in and kind of anticipated that we would have more specific questions, but we don't know specifically what the budget allocation is. But I do know that that's housed primarily with the Department of Rec and Parks. So it would be a budget item for them, and we would be partnering with them on resources and basically how to best utilize that tree canopy plan.
And I hear that and understand it. I think from my perspective, understanding that the role that trees play, right, in reducing stormwater runoff, protecting our communities, it would seem like it would be a line item across many budgets in my mind. Not something we need to dive deeper into today because we will have a budget discussion around the operating budget going forward. But do want to acknowledge that, right? We cannot say that we want to expand our tree canopy, yet not fund the ability to actually do that. So have to call that out. One other piece I wanted to give you just a chance to kind of speak to, what are some of the barriers that we're seeing to achieving our clean energy goals, and why are our goals not going to be more ambitious that folks would like to see?
So there are a lot of barriers in working in climate action with which both makes it kind of thrilling, but also, challenging work. I think some of the big challenges are that the plan doesn't just cover municipal operations. And I think it is very important that we focus in there and make sure that we're walking the walk, investing as we need to, both in terms of time and funding. But the plan is community-wide. And so we have to think in clever ways a little time about how do we incentivize and help residents? How do we really build the infrastructure for them to be able to make good, sustainable choices to improve everybody's quality of life? So that's one of the big challenges. Another is that there are a lot of things that are outside of our control. The relative, cleanness of electricity that we're pulling down from the grid. We can have some impact on that, but a lot of that is coming from the federal and the state levels, as well as, just changes within the state and federal administration. We have periods where we have tons of funding coming down and we're really working to scramble and access that as much as possible for the city. And then we have periods when funding is not as available, and the changing sort of policy landscape also makes it challenging in terms of market development, in terms of things like EVs, being able to access the technologies that we need to.
Thank you for that. And I think we'll have a deeper dive into the energy market in Ohio in just a second, but wanted to make sure we kind of talk through and name those barriers to the challenges that we're dealing with as it relates to the Climate Action Plan. I'm going to stop there, see if any questions from my colleagues.
Yes,
Go ahead, Councilmember.
I saw a reference to food waste. Where does composting fall within this particular plan, in your future plans?
Where does it fall within the plan?
Correct.
So we do have a specific section of the plan that deals with waste. It's another, major source of greenhouse gas emissions within the city, and we have individual actions to address recycling, as well as food waste, as well as trying to build a circular economy. So we're reusing as much material as possible. So we do have an action that directly addresses food waste. And it's kind of twofold, both thinking about how are we making sure that food is not going to the landfill when it can be, repurposed, redistributed within the city, make sure that folks are being fed. But there are, I think, 1 million pounds of organic waste that goes to the landfill every day in Columbus, which is a statistic that continues to blow my mind. So thinking about how are we making sure that food is not being wasted, but then also, how do we improve composting? And so there are some incentive programs to help people start doing backyard composting. But thinking about kind of broader composting services from the city is another challenge that could be taken on down the road. It's not yet being taken on. Yeah.
And I'll just say, just knowing, I know this is a priority for Councilmember Dorrance as he's looking on legislative changes to make composting easier going forward. So more to come on that one, but love the thinking. Also want to acknowledge Councilmember Bankston for joining us. Thank you for being here. I don't know if you have any questions because you missed the presentation, but all right, we're going to move on. All right, climate resilience is important to the health and long-term prosperity of our community. So thank you for providing us that update on the Climate Action Plan and for the work you're doing every day, Brooke. We really do appreciate it. As always, though, and I think we actually have a public speaker, right, on the Climate Action Plan? Shelley, are you here? Perfect. All right. We did have one speaker sign up to testify on the plan. Shelley Douglas, Executive Director of Green Columbus. If you could join us up here.
Oh, man. Yeah, maybe
Hello.
say something weird.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. All right. Hello, council members. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. I first just want to say I'm Shelley. I'm with Green Columbus. I'm our executive director, but I'm also the chair of the Central Ohio Watershed Council. I am on the Columbus Tree Subcommission, and I also sit on a lot of the Climate Action Plan working groups, so that's kind of my qualification to be here today. But as Councilmember Weich mentioned, Green Columbus supports the Climate Action Plan fully. We support the Urban Forestry Master Plan fully, but we're concerned that the implementation side of these plans is falling behind a little bit due to lack of funding to these programs. And so, as we know, the Climate Action Plan states that we need to increase our urban tree canopy in order to adapt. And the action item is listed as Columbus Rec and Parks as the lead. However, staff within Rec and Parks are reporting yet another decrease in funding next year. And due to injuries, health concerns, and extenuating circumstances, their planting team is operating at limited capacity when they should be expanding, outperforming, and increasing effectiveness with each planting season that passes. And so in order to reach this 40% goal by 2050, we need to double the amount of trees we have in Columbus. So given that it takes anywhere from 10 to 40 years for a tree to mature, we are running out of time to get these trees in the ground. And so we are urging not only City Council, but every department that is able to budget for tree planting to value trees and canopy is equally important as the other social risks which are affecting our city. Certainly all residents affected by food insecurity, unemployment, homelessness, poverty will be the first and most heavily affected by the adverse effects of the changing climate. And to quote Mayor Ginther, our most vulnerable residents are already being affected by the changing climate. So not only am I asking you to increase Rec and Parks budget for street tree planting, I'm asking you to prioritize funding to mobilize groups like Green Columbus, because we need to plant our schools, libraries, recreation centers, government buildings, YMCAs, everything that's not street trees, which is currently what Rec and Parks is working on. And so with over 90,000 street tree planting spots to be assessed by 2050, Rec and Parks has a full plate. Not to mention, they need more funding to do what they have on their plate. And so that's not parks, that's not rec centers, government buildings, that's just street trees. Which means, pregnant people waiting for health care at the Barrett Community Center are left to burn on the blacktop. Children no longer want to play sports because there's no relief from the heat at their local park or school. Residents are working 2 jobs and still can't afford to run their AC. And the bus stops are pretty unbearable to be at in the middle of the summer if you can even get to it. And so as Columbus voters have recently approved nearly $2 billion in bond packages, now is the time to invest in our urban tree canopy. It's one of the only resources we can fund now that will provide limitless benefits to Columbus residents for generations to come, even after all of us in this room are gone. And Green Columbus is here. We're ready to do the work. We need the city to recognize the urgency of funding these projects. And so I'll leave you with one last quote. The threat is clear, the stakes are high, and our obligation to our children and their future compels us to act now. And that is also from Mayor Ginther on the front page of the Climate Action Plan. And so we are just here to let Columbus residents know that even though we have an excellent plan in place, that does not mean the work is done. There's a lot of on-the-ground work to be done, and it's gonna require a lot of money to get it done, and we need time for these trees to grow, right? So that's why we want this funding, and we want it to be in tandem with the other development and growth that we have going on here, because all of our issues could be made worse if we don't have equitable tree canopy. So thank you very much for hearing me. Yeah,
So thank you for being here,
Yeah.
and obviously, thank you for your advocacy. I love the work that you all are doing out there every single day to try to provide that relief that we're looking for. But to your point, we need to do so much more. And so we appreciate having you in that fight as we continue to try to address climate by doing the minimum of planting trees. So thank you. Let me stop, see if my colleagues have any questions. Seeing none. Thank you for being here. Before we move on to the next section, always want to give a chance for those who did not have an opportunity to sign up. If you are interested in speaking on the Climate Action Plan update, I will invite you to join us up here at the podium now. And if you will just state your name and he is not coming up here. All right, so we're going to move on. Now we'll move into our community choice aggregation program portion of the hearing. To put it plainly, the Columbus Aggregation Program has 2 primary goals: achieve 100% in-state renewable energy generation for the residents of Columbus while saving them money on their energy bills. These two goals are critical in reaching the goals you just heard about in our Climate Action Plan and reducing our contributions to climate change while improving the quality of life of our residents. That's why I have requested an update from Trey Bell to kind of outline the state of the energy market, recent changes in the regulatory climate, and other implications for clean energy projects. So I'm excited today we have Aaron Sherman-Schneider. I knew I was going to butcher it, but I was close. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your work. I know it's been a tough year for clean energy projects, but appreciate you being here to provide an overview for us.
Thank you so much for that. If you can't hear me, please do let me know. Can or cannot? Cannot. Yes? Oh, there you go. Well, thank you, Chair Weish, for the introduction. Much appreciated. Very close. It's Aaron Schmerschneider. So close. I'm Managing Director with Trey Bell Energy. We are the city's aggregation consultant for the Clean Energy Aggregation Program. Thank you very much for having me this afternoon. Unfortunately, our president, Zahir Drew, sends his regrets. He was unable to attend today just due to ongoing FAA travel delays. As requested, here to provide a brief update regarding the energy markets and the status of the Clean Energy Aggregation Program. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to point this, but there you go. Great. So some key takeaways to focus on. First, that the Clean Energy Aggregation Program is both saving participants money and is 100% renewable. I think that's fantastic. Those are the two goals. Those goals are being met currently. Some of this will touch on what Ms. White had just spoken about, but the program cumulative savings are just shy of $60 million for all participants. Currently, about 200,000 participants in this program. About 10% of that is made up by small businesses. The rest are residents throughout the city. So we're seeing here that utility supply prices have nearly doubled since the program launch, but we're still able to provide significant savings to participants. An average household is going to save about $120 a year. That goes back into the home's pockets and back into the local economy. This program is really anchored by 3 Ohio-based clean energy assets. We have a solar array in Pickaway County that's about 180 megawatts. We have a 39 megawatt solar array in Clinton County, and then wind farm that is going to be coming from Huron and Erie counties. This program has afforded $800,000 to be invested into workforce development and $500,000 reinvested into solar co-op that helps build clean energy jobs and supports local solar community capacity. The takeaway here is that the program is protecting wallets while staying 100% clean with local investment. Next up, and this is quite an eye chart, so I'm really just going to read through a lot of this and kind of explain what all this means. Contributing factors to a rising pricing environment. As we've seen over the past several years, the cost of many things has gone up. Energy has not been immune from that. A very large driver is that natural power prices are very heavily correlated with the cost of wholesale power. Within our current regional generation mix, so that means the mix of what type of power plants produce the power in our grid, 45% of that is natural gas. So with that being a significant amount, that sets the price of power about 70% of the time. We've seen natural gas prices raise about 30% over the 5-year average. Another contributor here is just the generation mix in general and a lot of power plant retirements that we've seen. So since 2011, we've seen 12% of base load capacity become retired. Most of that was dispatchable generation, so that's typically going to be natural gas, coal, nuclear. With those retirements, we've only seen a replacement of about 4%, and that has come from intermittent resources that are solar and wind. Now, intermittent isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just means it's not always sunny and it's not always windy, and we still need power during the times when the sun is not out or the wind isn't blowing as significantly. So that has created really this supply-demand mismatch of not having enough base load generation to support the amount of electric load requirements today and what we are projecting to see into the future. I don't think anyone is a stranger to what we're hearing in the news right now in terms of AI and data center growth, manufacturing, electrification. All of those between now and the end of the decade is looking like a forecasted load increase of 25 to 30%. So again, this really just highlights that mismatch of the generation available today versus the load that we're expecting to come online into the future. Next, we wanted to talk about power purchase agreement prices for clean energy. We have seen, this very heightened amount level off a little bit, but you could see that it's significantly higher than back in 2021, which is closer to when the program started. At that point in time, we saw prices for PPAs about $40 a megawatt hour. Now we're seeing it about $81.50. So just the increased cost of clean energy in general, is kind of talking about the same thing with this elevated pricing environment. It's a lot of the same, prices are up from many contributing factors. Another point I wanted to talk to is actually the commodity price itself and capacity. So on the left-hand side, you're looking at the wholesale cost of power. And this shows you over the past 6 years where that has been trading at specific to Ohio. That large spike you see in 22, that's when Russia invaded Ukraine. And what I had just talked about with natural gas prices driving the price of power prices, this is when we saw natural gas skyrocket after that invasion. It drove power prices up in return. But you could see there was still a pretty big delta between near term, so that 12-month power price, and the 60-month long-term prices. We have seen those two price points come much closer together, which is really reflecting again that, the 5-year outlook is that prices will continue to remain elevated, and we expect to see this for the next several years to come. On the other end of it, we have PJM capacity price. PJM is our grid operator, and capacity is a cost that exists to incentivize power producers to make enough power so we don't have rolling, brownouts and blackouts. You can see that number jumped very, very high. It was at $29 a megawatt day, up to $270, and then the most recent auction we saw it cleared at close to $375. We'll have another auction that occurs in December. We would expect that price to remain at that same $375 price point. Then finally, I wanted to go into some legislative changes that are impacting the market, both federally and locally. So on the federal level, we have the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which phased out a lot of these tax incentives that were available for large-scale solar and wind production. Those incentives are still available, but you have to start the project by the middle of next year and complete the project by 2027 to qualify for those. Without those tax incentives, projects are just much more expensive. So what that means is they either don't get built or the cost of that is going to increase for people who are the off-takers of that power. On the local level, however, House Bill 15, Ohio House Bill 15, is helping to fast-track some brownfield projects through a 5-year property tax exemption and grants that are up to $10 million. It also enables behind-the-meter projects to be able to support multiple sites at once. Behind the meter just means you have power production on your site and you don't have to take it from the grid. A little bit dated, but I still think worth talking about is House Bill 52 back from 2021. This provided that county-wide veto authority on large-scale solar and wind projects. So again, this just kind of improves the difficulty of approval, increases the difficulty of approval, and then just creates more uncertainty for developers. So I think, again, the takeaway here is that Ohio policy is helping with select sites and select development, but there's still some changes and challenges on the federal level that are impacting the overall renewable growth that we're seeing. What does this mean for Columbus residents? You know, our program is still 100% renewable. It's still competitive and affordable prices, and that's the goal of the program in place. We are constantly evaluating the addition of new in-state projects into the program, but obviously it has to be price competitive, right? So if that is not the case, if it doesn't meet those qualifications of, yes, adding to in-state renewable while also being price competitive, then we move on and look at different projects. We're also currently working on our 26-27 commercial plan, which would price set for the next program year, which would start on June 1 of 2026. So I know that was a lot to go over. I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you again for having me and the opportunity to go over what's going on in the market today.
Well, appreciate you trying to give us Energy 101 in like a 10-minute span.
Sure, you got it.
It is always helpful, though, the more we can kind of put this in front of our residents and my colleagues and myself to make sure we can kind of continue to educate ourselves on what is happening in the space. One question I did want to ask, and you mentioned this in your presentation, that it takes about 7 years to get a project off the ground. Can you outline the reason for why that has increased in recent
Sure.
years?
Yeah, absolutely. So back in 2020, it was about a 4-year process. Now it's a 7-year process. Some of that is just how long it takes to build a power plant, right? So that can be, anywhere from 12 to 24 months, really, if, you're cranking it out and everyone's working all the time and labor is not an issue and materials aren't an issue. But those things are issues. So those are contributing factors. We're also looking at an approval queue. So to get a project built, it has to go in front of the grid operator. You have to say, yes, here's our plan, here's our financing, we're ready to go. Can you please approve the project? That queue is backlogged significantly. Now, it's shortened up a little bit. There's been some fast track efforts to get more projects through, but, build time, permitting, approval process now has led to this longer window. There's pressure from the federal government to expedite that approval process more, so I think we'll see that, in the coming year here. But as of right now, unfortunately, that timeline is just a bit longer than it used to be.
Yeah. Which is disappointing. I think there's always this push to try to find relief where you can, but the reality is you can't build the capacity immediately when you need it. You have to anticipate it and prepare for it, which will ring true in our next presentation, which is why I wanted to tee that up. Are there any barriers are there any barriers to getting new projects off the ground that are within our local control that we could be working to remove?
Yeah, so local siting, that's kind of a big thing to help move projects along. Hosting meetings where if there's community concerns, NIMBY concerns that come up, that those meetings are available to talk through with residents, because understandably, this is, a complex environment and a lot of questions just come from lack of understanding and that frustration that follows with that. So being able to provide that type of platform where people can ask questions and have a better understanding will help. Having less pushback, and various siting boards, I'm sure, would be, much more amenable to proving things if they have the resident support.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. That actually came up in recent conversations that we've had with our community council meetings where, I had a resident come up, say, I know I'm a part of this program. I don't understand any of this language. In addition, English is my second language, right? Where can we get more things translated in multiple languages, because we know we are a very diverse city, so that folks understand what they're signing up for and what these programs are doing to kind of benefit them. It was nice to still say, hey, we're still cheaper than the other rate, which is always a really good selling point as folks are trying to figure out what to do next. You kind of answered a lot of my other questions, so I'm going to stop there. Sure. See if my colleagues have any questions. Councilmember Bankston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to that point, I think it is always good to see that we are meeting the overall goal of saving our residents, right? That is when we went to the voters, said that they would save money compared to being out there in the open market. Can you talk to where are we to that goal? What we told folks where we wanted to be at, are we meeting that target goal of savings? And then 2, now where are we projected to get to that ambitious goal of 100% generation of clean energy?
Sure. Yeah, so in terms of savings, yes, we are meeting that goal. We have, the first year of the program was a little bit above, but every year since then has been meeting that goal of savings. In terms of progress to 100% clean, we're currently 100% clean. 30% of the program is supported by local in-state projects. The rest of it is being filled through national renewable energy certificates. So we are working towards that switch up, right? Where we have less of the renewable certificates that are filling the 100% and more of the local in-state that are filling that 100%. I believe the overall in-state goal was 60%, and currently we're at half of that, right? So we're at 30%, the in-state goal was 60%.
Got you. Thank you for that clarification. So it's really more, we have the certificates, so we're acquiring or offsetting that green energy somewhere else. Now, explain to me then the slide where it says that 45% of our base load is still natural gas. Is that considered clean?
That's just the generation mix for the entirety of the grid, right? So that's not specific to
The
this
grid that we're
program.
on.
That's
Gotcha.
right. Yep,
Okay.
it's a 13-state grid that Ohio is a part of, and that base load is 45% natural gas.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Sure, yes.
Great questions. Anything else? All right. Well, Aaron, appreciate you being here and obviously kind of walking us through that. I do want to pause and see if there's anyone in the audience, and hopefully no one stands up when I ask this time, if you would like to come up and speak on the city's community choice program. All right. Seeing no one, we are going to move on. Thank you again for being here, and thank you for kind of walking us through that. So now we will move into the rate proposal portion of the hearing. I know this is a difficult conversation that none of us want to have because residents are going to feel any increase, small or large. I have to tell you, as Chair of Public Utilities, this is not my favorite month of the year, any year. But sadly, we have to have this conversation. So why are we here? Like many of the challenges our residents are facing, the root cause is our population growth. Our region is projected to grow to 3 million by 2030. We have seen what happens when we lag on investments for infrastructure projects. Let's think sidewalks, let's think transportation, housing. We cannot risk delay in water infrastructure. We also need to maintain, repair projects for our aging existing infrastructure that cannot wait because of legal requirements and health implications to our community. The proposal you're about to hear is based on the department's cost of service analysis, an affordability study, and a review of upcoming debt payments. After simulating different scenarios and having many hard conversations over the last few weeks, the department has brought forth this proposal. First, we're going to hear from the chair of the Utility Advisory Board, Jason Coma, who will read a letter from the board, and then we will hear from Deputy Director Lee, who will kind of walk us through the proposed rates and fees. Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's nice to say that as well. Right back to you, sir. And thank you, members of council and President Hardin, for the opportunity to speak today and see all of you. I'm Jason Coma. I'm the chair of the Utility Advisory Board. And on behalf of the board, I'm here to follow up on our proceedings throughout the year. So the Utility Advisory Board, together with representatives of the Department of Public Utilities, met about 5 different times throughout 2025 to review utility operations, capital improvement needs, affordability programs for water, sewer, stormwater, and power services. And following the board's public meeting on October 29th, the Utility Advisory Board, or UAB, voted unanimously to recommend the 2026 rate adjustments outlined as follows. These rate adjustments would be effective January 1st, 2026. Water, 18% increase. Sanitary sewer, 8% increase. Stormwater, 2% increase. All combined, these adjustments will increase the average inside city residential bill by about $10.50 a month. That's $31 per quarter, or about $126 a year. For a household using 20 CCF per quarter. For those of you not familiar with the translation of CCF, that's about 165 gallons per day, or really a typical family of 4, household of 4. For outside city customers, the average increase is $12.50 per month. That translates into about $150 per year. Low-income participants in our discount programs will see a smaller impact about $8.50 per month or $103 per year. You know, as noted in the intro, Mr. Chair, these rate recommendations are driven, primarily by long-term infrastructure investments that are really essential to maintaining reliable service and supporting the region's rapid growth. Chief among these is the Home Road Water Plant and Transmission Line Project. That's a $2 billion investment funded through state revolving loans with construction beginning in 2026 and with an estimated completion date of 2033. You know, that project is really, as you know, is critical to adequate drinking water capacity for the region, you know, that's expected to reach 3 million residents, here in 25 more years by 2050. You know, additional drivers include debt service for the Fourth Water Plant and other capital projects within the $8.6 billion 2026 to 2031 plan. New uniform commercial water rate structure, ensuing large users pay their fair share for system capacity. Updated capacity fees for water and sewer connections. This would be the first update since 2006 to really more accurately reflect the cost of system expansion. Sewer fixed charges by meter size and updated extra strength charges based on industry standards, and power rate adjustments that continue the multi-year investments in smart lighting and system modernization. You know, without these adjustments, future rate increases would need to be even higher, given the loan repayment obligations to maintain the city's strong credit ratings. And that's something the board focused on quite a bit throughout our deliberations and meetings. You know, recognizing the impact on households, and this is, really, I think, a great place to focus on. The board strongly supports expanding the low-income and senior discount program. Those recommended changes included raising the discount from 25% to 30% in 2026, and having a goal to have that at 40% by 2028. And then, enhancing additional partnerships and outreach. We need to get more folks signed up for the discounts that they have available that can help support, especially as the needs grow. You know, the board is also encouraged by the department looking at different options beyond discounts that help residents maintain affordability. Some of those things are monthly billing, budget billing, expanded leak adjustments, and extended payment plans, just to name a couple. These efforts, as you would probably know, align with City Council's priorities to balance affordability and the need for sustainable utility operations. Overall, the Utility Advisory Board believes these recommendations are fair, equitable, and financially responsible, and ones that we don't bring to this body lightly, but also provide the revenues necessary to operate, maintain, and improve the critical utility infrastructure while preserving affordability for the most vulnerable customers. And we thank Council for its partnership and growth for sustainability for our community. And I'd be happy to answer questions or turn it over to Mr. Lee or whatever the chair would like, sir. I'm a little rusty, so I apologize.
No worries. My stuff's all written for me, so I just follow the script. No, thank you, Chair. Thank you for kind of walking us through the recommendation from the UAB. I know John's going to go deeper into the actual details, so we'll give him a chance. I don't know if any of my colleagues had any initial questions. If not, we can go on to the actual presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Weich. Good afternoon, President Hardin, Chair Weich, and members of council. Today, Columbus Water and Power is happy to present the 2026 proposed rates for water, sewer, stormwater, and power. Our focus and commitment continues, delivering safe, reliable, affordable services while preparing for major regional growth and long-term infrastructure needs. Our first priority is ensuring sufficient revenue to operate our systems and pay debt service on critical capital investments. Second, we must continue building and maintaining the infrastructure required to support one of the fastest growing regions in the Midwest. Third, every rate we propose is rooted in cost of service principles, ensuring fairness across customer classes. And finally, we recognize affordability challenges. These rates maintain our commitment to residential bill relief and expanding our customer assistance programs. So for 2026, for a typical residential customer using 20 CCFs per quarter, The increase is about $10.50 per month, or roughly $126 per year. Low-income program participants, they see a smaller increase of about $8.50, reflecting our affordability strategy. And suburban customers who pay around 30% more than Columbus, they see a slightly higher increase. Overall, the average household bill increases 11.7%, keeping Columbus among the lowest cost utilities in the region. So here I wanted to show our operating budget and our capital budget. Our 2026 operating budget maintains day-to-day system reliability. It covers treatment costs, field and office staffing, chemical system maintenance, and many other items to maintain our service levels. Also, the 2026 to 2031 capital improvement plan totals $8.6 billion, reflecting the enormous infrastructure needs required to support regional growth and aging assets. The largest components are water and sewer due to the new plant construction, tunnels, and replacement work. The Home Road Water Plant at approximately $2.3 billion is the centerpiece project ensuring long-term water supply resilience. 2 new up-ground reservoirs will ensure adequate raw water storage as population and industry expand. We have our lead service line replacement program and Blueprint Columbus. They remain major public health and regulatory initiatives. We have multiple tunnel projects, including our Three Creeks Relief Tunnel, our Lower Olentangy Tunnel 2, which address wet weather capacity and EPA requirements. Across all divisions, we're building for resiliency, redundancy, and growth. This slide just really kind of shows what we have as far as water infrastructure, just a couple snapshots of some of our water storage tanks, just some infrastructure out in the field. We have lagoons that we have to maintain as part of our water treatment process, and we're currently engaged in a replacement of our meters through our AMI project. Sewer infrastructure, just a quick snapshots just to kind of give you some perspective of our total, sorry about that, of what we have going on in our sewer system. You can see there that tunnel boring machine, the head of that tunnel as it came through the wall there. You can see we've got a cogeneration engine there in the upper right that we're getting ready to turn on. It's going to turn biogas into energy. All those color-coded areas down there at our Southerly wastewater treatment plant are going to be built for expansion and capacity. Our Blueprint Columbus program in the bottom right there is just some of the green infrastructure we're installing. On the Home Road Water Plant, our modeling shows that we could reach or exceed 247 million gallons of treatment capacity by 2030. I'll go into some detail about that, but first I wanted to kind of show you what that looks like, what's going on there right now on that site. First, you can see the schematic of what the new plant's going to look like in the upper left. Right below that is just a visual of what's happening. We have a site prep contract right now where they're actively moving earth in anticipation of the upcoming contract for construction. And then you can see what it's going to look like. The plant up there in that map is going to be built along the reservoir with the lines, the distribution lines or transmission lines coming down to serve our system. So that whole plant plus those lines is the $2.3 billion. So again, this graph kind of shows that our modeling shows that Columbus could reach or exceed our 247 million gallons per day treatment capacity by 2030 without adding the Home Road Water Plant. So again, this is driven by rapid population growth, industrial expansion, and increased regional services. The timeline for the Home Road Water Plant and the needed rate increases to start servicing the debt aligns with when the new capacity is needed. We recently did an economic impact study to kind of see what it looks like, what it would look like if we did not have certain water services here. And what that study found that 2 weeks without water would result in a total regional economic loss of roughly $5.8 billion. It also found that potable water and wastewater services are critical for the economy and future economic development. continuing permanent economic activities from management, maintenance, and operating water and wastewater services support $1.3 billion in gross annual economic output across the region. So I just wanted to point that out. Here on this slide, you can see here, we've got a comparison of our population growth to water production. As you can see there, as population is increasing, so does our water production. So next, I wanted to kind of compare how we are with some of our regional partners regarding bill increases. So even with these proposed increases, you can see that Columbus maintains the lowest residential bill compared to our regional peers. You can see that on the left side. We're at the very bottom there. Commercial bills on the right remain very low relative to similar utilities, supporting economic and growth in the region as well. This slide here, when you compare it to local utilities around Columbus, Columbus customers continue to pay significantly less, even with these proposed rate increases. You can see there that we have Columbus current, and then we have Columbus proposed right below it. So we have some other changes as well that we're proposing in the ordinances that we have before council. We're aligning several charges with updated cost of service findings. These include extra strength sewer charges, a fixed sewer charge by meter size, and updated capacity and tap fees. These capacity and tap fees have not been updated, as Chair Coma said, since 2006. A new commercial uniform rate. This is going to ensure high-volume users appropriately pay for the system capacity they rely on. We also have a new cogeneration power rate that supports reliable electricity for our treatment plants. And finally, wet weather fees are updated to more accurately reflect the cost of managing peak wastewater and stormwater flows. So let's talk a little bit about the uniform commercial rate. So moving to a uniform commercial rate, what this is going to do is going to reduce bills for our smaller usage businesses, but it increases the charges for very large users who drive system capacity demands.
John, can I just, what's an example of a high-capacity user?
A high-capacity user that we're talking about could be a user that's consuming 140,000 CCFs per month. So we're talking millions of gallons a day in demand.
Do you have a sense of the type of business or organization,
You could
company?
look at, in that group, you could look at a data center. You could look at a brewery. You could look at another, major bottling companies. You could look at some pharmaceutical types of companies, use a lot of water. So we don't have very many in that bracket. So with this change, what you're going to see is 99% of commercial companies are actually going to see a bill decrease. So almost less than 1% are going to exceed this large bill increase to this uniform rate. So the Columbus's new uniform rate still leaves large users paying less than major peer utilities. This structure improves fairness and better aligns cost with system demand. So in this case, here's an example of a high user that's consuming 140,000 CCFs a month. You can see there our existing rate structure in the first green bar, and then with the uniform rate, how much their bill is going to increase, and then you can compare that to other high users across the country. So what this is kind of showing is that even with the increase, we're still remaining competitive from industries that are really looking to come here, but they're going to have to pay for the additional capacity when they do. I also wanted to point out that even though we're moving towards a uniform rate in 2026, that's our proposal, we are planning to transition from the uniform rate to an inclining block rate. So you can see there that uniform is obviously one rate. we're recommending in 2027 that we go up even higher, so that uniform rate's going to increase. You can see there that we're proposing, $3.82 as a uniform rate, and then for that same consumption, it's going to go up to $4.36 in the upcoming years. So implementing inclining block immediately could create rate shock for our commercial customers, especially industrial customers. So we feel one-year transition is appropriate. And again, there's not every commercial company has those peaks that certain other industries do. Inclining block also encourages efficient water use and sends a clear price signal for high-volume consumption. Capacity fee updates.
John, real quick before you move on, can you speak to the original setup? Like, what was ultimately the goal, the objective with having a setup that reduced the bill for folks with more water they consume?
Chair Wedge, so you can see there at the bottom table, what we have right now is what's considered a declining block. So the less you consume, the more you pay. The more you consume, the less you pay. So that was a type of a block structure that has been around for decades. There's really three types of major block structures: declining block, uniform, and inclining. And so the rationale behind that was to really kind of spur development in a region. You get customers that are high water users, they come in and they're paying less for capacity. So there's not too many other utilities that are really in that rate structure. There's a couple, but overall about 58% nationwide are in the uniform rate structure or inclining block.
Thank you.
So on capacity fees, we've not updated our capacity fees since 2006, despite significant increases in construction costs and infrastructure demands. Updated fees ensure new development pays its fair share of system capacity. Our proposed fees remain competitive regionally, even after adjustment. You can see here that on the left side, the water capacity fees, even as proposed, are still lower than other area cities and villages. Likewise, we're about middle of the road there on the sewer capacity fees, even after the increases. Next, our sewer fixed charge by meter size. So you can see there at the top table what we do now for our fixed charge, which really covers meter reading services, billing services, things of that nature. We've been applying a flat rate for all customers, which are usually in the standard strength. This is on the sewer side. So what we're proposing is we kind of break that out. And so customers that have a larger water meter size are paying more because they're bringing in more water. They're having more sewer discharge, ultimately costing the utility more. So again, this is cost of service based. And we're presenting that recommendation before council. Next, I'll shift over to power rate increases. So for power, we are continuing along our multi-year increase plan, 5 years for residential and 3 years for commercial. The power division must modernize its infrastructure and strengthen system reliability. These increases generate about $16 million in new annual revenue necessary to meet capital and operating needs. This is just a quick snapshot of some of the things going on at the Division of Power. Our service area, not too many people know about our service area for power. You can see there highlighted in the green. It's a utility that's been around over 100 years here in the city. We're responsible for street lights for the whole city, not just for the Division of Power service area. So I just wanted to point that out. For the Division of Power, we have significant upgrades that are needed, things like substation upgrades, distribution equipment, LED street lighting, and system resiliency. Historical capital spending, as illustrated here, has not kept pace with system needs. making these increases essential to maintain reliability and safety. So what we're showing here is that over the years, we've only been investing an average about $2.5 million in the Division of Power on their capital side. After a study of their fixed assets and their depreciation, we realized that we need to put them at least $15 million. And so we recently received some bond dollars for the Division of Power, and we're hoping to continue to receive additional dollars. And these revenues will help support that debt service for those capital projects. Next, I wanted to move in, and I'll kind of finalize the presentation with a discussion on our low-income programs. So we continue to expand our low-income programs. We're requesting the discount, as mentioned, to be increased from 25% to 30% for low-income households. We still have our service fee waiver for seniors. That's going to continue, and we'll continue to have our discount available for multi-unit landlords. You can see here in this next slide kind of the uptrend in our program starting in 2022 based on our efforts to increase participation. So far in 2025, we've seen participation grow 4% since the end of 2024. I'm also happy to report that last year, when council approved the creation of our Power Low Income Program, we've already received 1,041 Power participants already enrolled. So this slide shows some of the data that we're looking at. So we worked with a consultant to really dive into where families are located that would be eligible for our low-income program. And so it was pretty astounding to find that of the 7,000 that we already have enrolled, that even before we increased the federal poverty level to 200%, we had the ability to capture 70,000 residents that could be eligible. As we increased the federal poverty level to 200% from 150, that increased it another 35,000. So in total, in Franklin County, we've got over 105,000 that we could reach through our low-income program based on this data. So what are our goals with this program? Our goals are to double participation. We're committed to reaching that goal of 2026. To double it, that would mean we would have 17,000 signups. So we're also going to increase the discount in 2027 to 35%, and again, make another recommendation to increase it to 40 in 2028, providing meaningful relief. We're also launching new branding, multilingual applications, improved materials, and strengthened partnerships with community groups. We now have a dedicated staff with new tools, and I'll go through some of the things that we've changed. We've got a new application, as you can see here, kind of a refreshed look, easier to read. We lay out the household size with our maximum income. We've got a QR code there. So we're actively working on streamlining this for release in 2026 with a complete refresh. We're also developing some new bill stuffers. We have many customers that still receive paper bills. We can insert this in their bill. All they have to do, obviously, is click on that QR code, and it's formatted for the cell phone, so they can quickly apply to the program if they're eligible. We're also looking at and creating door hangers. That's the front and back of a door hanger, where if we're out in the field, in coordination with some of our field staff, hang these on doors, just for awareness. Likewise, new postcards where we can mail those out to customers. This is a handout for community events that we prepared. So whenever we're out in the public, again, we can have this up for various events. It's very easy to read, short. And again, the QR code, so customers can get a quick snapshot of this and hopefully leave with some good information and hopefully an application submitted. Right here, what we have is our, just wanted to call this out as far as our current relief program that we just developed. This is for the federal shutdown relief. During federal shutdowns, we deployed emergency customer relief tools to support residents affected by missed paychecks. So we're pausing turnoffs related to non-payment, and we're waiving late fees. This reflects our commitment to compassion and flexibility during unexpected hardships. So again, as mentioned, some of the other policy considerations we're looking at, obviously, we're slowly transitioning to monthly billing. That's going to really help and improve affordability by reducing bill spikes. Leak adjustments. The leak adjustment frequency, we're going to look at increasing that from every 3 years to once per year. We're proposing a 12-month repayment option for large unexpected bills and offering budget billing for predictable monthly payments. Water service restoration, we're looking at requiring a 50% payment rather than a full balance, making reconnection far more attainable. This is just for customers so they can see if they go into our customer portal, where customers can sign and get access to our discount programs on those links on the right. They can access our utility updates, where they can see what's happening at the utility, some of our local news, and they can also sign up through these links for the water and power payment plans. Also, we have something new that we started this year, what's called the Columbus Care Program. So through this link, customers who want to make a one-time or recurring donation to help families in need can do this through this program. All you have to do is, when you pay your bill, you can round up, and what we will do is we will put that in a fund. As the balance increases, our goal is to provide credits to low-income customers, or a customer that may have a situation where they have a high bill. They might not be low income, but it's basically an assistance program. And we're doing that because the ARPA dollars that we had for the last few years are sunsetting. So this year, we were still able, and we are able now, to apply the credit that we had allocated for bills. So we're really excited about this program. And I'll wrap up here with this final slide here, just some other assistance items that we have at the department as we're out in the field installing and improving lead lines, removing those lead lines. We have an assistance program there where you can get $10,000 in assistance. This is a long-term 99-year loan where you don't have to pay it back until transfer of title. Likewise, we've got the similar program on the sewer side. If you have a septic tank and you want to abandon that septic tank, we've got a program where you can use $10,000. Again, it's a loan like the lead service line. We also have some utility warranty program where you can sign up for, in the event that you have a line break on your property, pay a little bit, and then you can get that repaired through a contractor. So with that, Council President Hardin, Chair White, and members of council, I'll conclude my presentation and answer any questions.
Well, John, thank you for walking us through the proposal and for all the conversation over the last month or two as we kind of get to this date. One of the first questions I have to ask, right? What if we just don't increase the rates? What does that look like?
If we don't increase the rates for 2026, we're probably going to be coming back to council in 2027 with a higher increase. And the reason being is that, we're committed to moving forward with the fourth water plant and all these other capital investments. And just due to the timeline that it takes to construct that plant, it's not going to be operational until 2033 or 2034. We're actually going to be fully operating it. And so we look at that, and as illustrated in the chart that I showed, where we're very cognizant of the growing population and their water demands. And so we feel that this is a very critical project. And so if we did delay them, we would come back with rate increases likely to 25 to 35%, compared to what we've got presented before you, which is 18, and we plan to hopefully cascade those downward over the next few years.
I appreciate that. So I think there's also been some confusion around the bond package and rate increases, right? Can you just explain how those two things kind of play to what we're looking at here? And is there a way in which the city, the residents, are saving money by going in one direction or the other for paying for this type of infrastructure?
Chair White, that's a great question, and understandable that there might be some confusion, but we will use that money eventually. We will use the 500 million in bond authority, but we've got such a great partnership with Ohio Water Development Authority for our construction projects, our design, construction, and inspection projects. And so we always seek the lowest cost of borrowing for our customers. And so traditionally, that lower cost of borrowing has been with the loan program through Ohio Water Development Authority. Typically, we use the bonds for projects that really don't qualify for the loan program. Those could be facilities projects, storage tank improvements, other things that just don't impact water quality. And so it will take a bit of time to draw down that 500 million in bond authority. So every time we issue bonds, we draw that down. If we issue 100 million in bonds, we'll have 400 million left in that bond authority. So it'll take a few years, but we will use it.
I appreciate just kind of clearing that up for folks. I know that's a question that has been out there. I have just one more question, and then I'm going to open up. I'm sure my colleagues have questions as well. Data centers, right? That is the topic at hand. That is what folks are most concerned about. Is the need to expand our water infrastructure being driven by the need to service data centers?
I would say no. I would say it's our system as a whole. We've got a very diverse system. When you look at our consumers and our consumption, we've got most of it's residential consumption. So when you break things down, commercial is a big part, but this industrial sector of our overall class, it's not by any means near just general commercial or even residential. So I would say it's not driving these rate increases. It's really the anticipated growth, residential growth, really, up to the next 25 years and what we're planning for based on projections that we could be a population of 3 million by 2050. So with data centers, one of the things is they've got peaks, they have peak demands. And so we are looking at those peak demands because sometimes those peak demands increase or are estimated to increase above our rated capacity for our plants. So that's really the one thing about data centers. They don't really have a level consumption. There's a lot of immediate demands for a few months.
Appreciate that. Let me open it up.
Well, thank you, Chair, and thank you to the department, to the director, to the advisory board for working to provide council this proposal today. And even thank you to Councilmember Weiss for shepherding this process thus far. I think that what you are wrestling with, and certainly what this council is wrestling with, is not just the need to build and prepare for the future, but for the current day reality of what cost a resident can bear in this current environment. And you used a good phrase in talking about the commercial rates and potential increases, called it like an adjustment shock. So I guess my general question and lines of questioning are around how do we as a city balance our future needs that we can all agree on with the adjustment shock of the current financial situations that our residents are dealing with, be that higher costs for food. We just went through a SNAP benefits situation. We saw what property taxes did to our community over the last. How do we balance that need for future investment with the potential shock that could come to our ratepayers, our customers?
President Hardin, that's a great question, and something that we look at as far as our modeling. Really, we've often said that customer affordability is paramount. So, as Chair White had mentioned, many scenarios were run. And, we're looking again, what is that monthly bill impact? Again, it's $10, we understand that, and that is something that is meaningful. And, as these rate increases continue over the years, it's going to get even more meaningful. Some folks don't have anything to, give. There's no give in their budget. And so that's what we are in a situation where we're always looking for tools and techniques and what other utilities are doing to help those customers. And so I think, again, when we look at our assistance programs, we have some options there. We've seen some that even raise the 200% poverty level to 250%. So you're going to get a wider income level. I think a family of 9 can go up over 125,000. So there's more opportunity to go there. Again, what we've got presented is a plan to increase those discounts even more. I've seen other utilities, they've got a 50% discount. So I think if we can really make strides to get folks signed up and really meet that mark, if we could get to 100,000 or even 70,000, that would be very, very successful for the program. I think customers also.
Could we actually afford to even get to the 100,000? If we know now that there's 100,000 folks in our community that are eligible for rate reduction, why is our goal not 100,000? Why is it 17,000? You know what I mean? Like if we could afford, if we are saying that we observe that these increases are going to mean something for residents who are struggling, our grandparents, then why are we okay with the delta being 70, 80,000 folks still out there that could afford but aren't?
Agree, and that's a great question. Why is our goal at 17? Why is it not at 70 or 100? I just do not think that we can attain that in 1 year. I think it's going to take multiple years. From what we've found, I mean, we've had these programs in place for a long time, like decades, and these numbers are just too low, and so it takes a lot of research and understanding of why. What is the problem? Why are they not aware of it? Is it our marketing efforts? Are most of these folks in multi-units, which we have struggled with as far as getting multi-units to sign up? So we haven't identified, the key to success with this program. I think we want to be realistic with our goals, and as these changes come on and our efforts are fruitful, perhaps we can increase our goal for 2027 to double that.
And Council President Harden, if I may, that has been a point that the advisory board brings up routinely and has really encouraged, if not challenged, the department to take many of the strides that they have. So I'll take myself as an example. We've got a cross-section of folks who are on the advisory board, commercial, industrial, people representing the legal aid community, the area on aging community. I think some of you may know my somewhat newer role. I run the statewide network of free clinics in the state of Ohio. And so, as an aside, thank you to council's support of those in the city of Columbus. But these are folks that fit that gap. They're hardworking people who are our neighbors, who an impact is going to hurt, and it's tough. We have challenged the department to come up with new ways to increase and meet that gap. Many of the newer tools that Mr. Lee had shown today are things that have come forward to try and get us to a point where, we can go from not just 70,000 but to beyond, right? And so it's something that, trust me, for the time that I've been on the board, it is every single meeting, how can we make sure that affordability is front and center and those who are most vulnerable don't get left behind when they're getting left behind in so many other places.
For sure.
And so it's the advisory board is on.
And I think that is important to parse out the difference between a low-income homeowner who's paying a single bill versus a low-income renter and the inability to separate those two types of bills. And just on this point in general, it's an expectation of council, but it's also an opportunity to partner with council. That goal of and we should start every meeting, every time that we have an opportunity, we should be working and telling, funding folks, community groups, local nonprofits, that there are folks out there who are struggling to pay bills that don't have, that could have rate reductions. And it's just, it will be unacceptable to raise rates on folks without tripling down on the efforts to make sure that folks who don't even need to pay that much pay that. My last question just is going back to, I don't want to just pick on data centers, so I'll go back to your term, high rate users. We talked about this. You had a slide up there that showed that we have been in an imbalance of how we have, not imbalance, it was a decision that we as a community made, that we used lower rates to incentivize business and business development and folks able to make money, which is good. Those are jobs that came to Columbus. You said that the reason that we have to build these third and fourth water plants are not just because of high rate users, but we have to acknowledge that we have more of them now, and that the incentives have worked in terms of creating more. And then we showed that we're going to go from a declining to a uniform first, and then we'll talk about inclining, so the more you use. And then we put up the slide that showed that even if when we start at, we're still lower than a lot of other communities. How do we justify being okay with being less than a lot of other communities in a time, again, where we're going to ask something very, very tough on folks who are struggling to balance out or to build out for a system for in the future? So the question is it not okay just to catch up with, maybe this is one where we don't need to still be at the bottom of the pack in terms of how communities charge for commercial water usage?
President Harden, that's a great question and understood. Why don't we just go right to inclining block? Why are we having, stalling 1 year at uniform? Again, we've had this declining block in for decades, and I think it's, just a realization that this is going to impact businesses. Again, we've got a lot of businesses that are not data centers that are very high users. And I think that they're going to be like, I'm not a data center, and why is my bill going up like this? And so I think that there's reasons, there's justification for it. These are industry standard types of rate models, and they're all cost of service based. But, we want to also remember those customers that have been here for decades as well, that have been in this community, have been contributing to this community. These data centers have been in here, the last, I don't know how many years, but recently. And yes, they are using a lot, but their bills are on par with those other major commercial customers as well. So really, it's kind of a transition period. I mean, we're looking again at going to inclining block in 2027, but we don't want to get in a situation where you talk about customers and some of these products that these local large commercial companies are producing. They could end up passing on those costs to those high water rates into their product prices. So consumers would end up paying there through additional price increases. So again, this is new territory for us. We're kind of just taking it slow, see how things go. But before you know it, we're going to be in 2027. We're going to look at some of the data that we get. We're going to analyze, do we actually have commercial delinquencies? We don't really have very many commercial delinquencies, but we'll see what the bill impact is to this change to this uniform rate. We'll see how they respond. We don't know how the data centers are going to respond. We don't know how some of those other large users are going to respond as well.
Well, I just want to, again, start off how or end how I started off in thanking you for the hard work. I know these are not easy decisions that are being proposed to this council. I hope that you are hearing and understanding the struggle that I am having, and I'm assuming this council will have, with asking more from folks who are desperate right now. This is what we get stopped in the grocery store about as elected officials. Is it being too expensive to live right in our city right now? And so I think the opening that we have again that I'm seeing is this opportunity to work with whoever will to close that gap in terms of folks who can't afford, and we know that they can't afford, and yet are not taking advantage of that. And not that it's low-hanging fruit, and not that you haven't tried, but that it has to be more than a challenge if that is going to be an expectation for us at council. And also we'll have to have other big conversations about what we need and how we balance that with what folks can afford at what time, and be transparent about it as well. And so grateful for everybody, again, grateful to the director, to the director's office, to the advisory board, to Councilmember Weish and his team for your leadership. And my apologies, I have to run as a single dad. Pickup for child daycare is at 5:30, so I'm going to run. Thank you.
No worries, Councilmember. I have my kids stashed in my office. I'm sure it's a mess by the time we get out of here. Councilmember Beatty, just want to check in, see if you had any questions specific related to the rate increase proposal. All right. John, thank you. I know the department is grappling with the same questions as council. As the council president mentioned, how do we meet the water needs of our increasing population while balancing the rising cost to provide service and the ability for residents to actually make ends meet? There are no easy answers, but I appreciate the working relationship my team has with Columbus Water and Power so we can work together to find ways to help provide relief to our constituents who truly need it. We can live without a lot of things. We cannot live without water. We have one person who has signed up so far to provide public testimony. I want to invite up Kwesi Lowe. And if anyone else who is here who didn't get a chance to sign up would like to speak, if you can check in with Jocelyn in the back, if you can wave, she can get you signed up. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. My name is Ryan Holmes, affectionately known in the community as Kwesi Lowe. A lot of people didn't know that, so this is formal, so wanted to make sure I was truly accounted for. Also wanted to just take a moment to show some appreciation for even though the numbers are shrinking, the opportunity to get to speak in front of 4 Black men represented as the body of city council. Again, my name is Kwesi Lowe. I'm Deputy Director of Columbus Stand Up, a local grassroots organization advocating for working class families in Central Ohio. This week, we launched a campaign called Lights Out on AAP, calling attention to increased electricity costs in Central Ohio. I know we're talking about water increases right now, but one of the things that we've been aware of is the general increase in utilities across the board. We're a grassroots organization, definitely want to ultimately be able to address utility increases across the board. Right now we have the capacity to address AP, so we're addressing AP, but thought this was an opportunity to kind of speak to that in general. Since we've launched on Monday, we've collected over 1,000 petitions. Though today's topic, I've already kind of mentioned that. We encourage City Council to keep this affordability crisis in mind before approving any additional rate hikes. We encourage City Council to use this authority wisely when contracting with big tech companies on data centers, which uses a tremendous amount of water and electricity to operate.
I appreciate you being here, and appreciate the work you all are doing out in the community. One thing that would be helpful, right, and we've talked about this throughout this hearing as it relates to the rates. We need people who need assistance to sign up for this program. And so I would love the opportunity to kind of connect you with our team that is working on utility assistance to see if there are ways in which we can reach deeper into the community to connect with folks. So I don't know if you all are interested in doing that type of work, but we need support.
Absolutely. I mean, the community needs that type of thing right now, especially. So that's a great opportunity. I would love to do my part to make sure that the community is aware of such things. So we'd love to connect and talk more about it.
Appreciate it. I believe Nina Brooks is in the audience. She is leading our efforts on utility assistance. I want to make sure you all connect. So appreciate you being here. Thank you for your advocacy and for the work that you all are doing in the community.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No worries. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak? Perfect. If you'll come up and introduce yourself, any organization you represent.
Good evening, Councilman White. My name is Douglas Lumpkin. I'm just a resident, and I wanted to get some additional information and understand a little bit about the bond package again and how it relates to the overall increase. On the surface, obviously, as we hear about infrastructure and future and making that argument, one of the things I did not hear in the presentation, maybe it was there, I came in late, was an extrapolation as we talked a lot about population increase, but I did not hear a lot about the extrapolation of the fees and the revenue that would be generated as part of that. I'm assuming Service Director has put that in his modeling, but haven't heard that. And also, to President Harden's point, a little bit about, hey, we talk a lot about doing this because of the future needs. You talked a lot about that being further out, but the residents now, you're asking them to carry that expense. On the bond package, he mentioned, yes, we're going to use some of that. I think it is difficult for residents to understand how we could have a bond package, talk about infrastructure within that bond package, say it's going to be used, and then over here, a week after the bond package passes, come and say, hey, we have some infrastructure cost over here that can't be handled by the bond package, even though, just as we've talked about, some of those plants, some of these upgrades are a number of years out before they'll be completed. So I wanted to hear a little more because the plan, as I heard it, basically said, hey, we're going to do some things with the bond package, but that's out there a little ways. But these rate increases need to be now. I also understood a little bit about the conversation about the financing. I'm making an assumption that as we go through the financing, that the programs that we're using are cheaper rates than the bonds. That would be a general question that I would have as well. And so outside of the timing of this, which I think at the very least is poorer 1 week after residents just voted for $1 billion bond package. And then even if you're on point in every way in this environment, for that to occur a week after. Anyway, so thank you for giving me a few minutes. I don't know if you want me to follow up with, I just want to understand that connection between infrastructure that we're paying for fees and supposedly infrastructure associated with the water that's being covered by the bond package. I wanted to understand a little more about that relationship. Happy to follow up separately and not take council's time, but wanted to mention that. Thank you for listening.
This is your living room, sir. We're not taking up our time. We're here to represent you and to hear from you. November is that time in which we discuss rates every year. It is not a fun time of the year for me as Chair of Public Utilities, but I understand your concern there. But you had a couple questions in there, and I want to let the Deputy Director kind of speak to that. So one, Deputy Director, why can't we just wait until we need that added capacity to
I'm not even
do
suggesting,
projects?
I'm not even suggesting wait. You're basically asking residents now, for whatever reason, and I get where we fall with other communities, but you're basically asking residents now, hey, your fees need to go up because of these reasons and for our future forecasting.
Yep.
All right? And all I'm saying was, in that presentation, within that future forecasting, though I know it's there, I'm assuming, there is modeling that shows, hey, we're going to add this kind of residents, and even under these billing practices, we're going to have this kind of revenue. All right? Now, I didn't quite hear that in the proposal, but I'm assuming that exists. On the side about assistance for other families, I think the point that you're making about working with nonprofit groups and those who are already working with low income is a very strong point. The only thing I would add to that is I might get with Bo because he's running the HEAP program. Not sure if you can do it, but would probably recommend something like categorical eligibility that basically says if you're over here on the HEAP program, that is 165% of poverty, and you guys are now at 200, why didn't he have the form? And when he's doing folks for HEAP, he's got bills, he's got family composition, some of those kinds of things that I am sure is on your form. Might want to work through that, as well as the Urban League and their job program, because they do a similar kind of thing. Just
Yeah.
a suggestion.
No, definitely hear you there. We work a lot with Impact already on a lot of variety of programs. We're going to have to engage any and everyone who's kind of working with constituents on a regular basis.
But it is, in my view, taking that next step in that sense. The way I said that was, if I'm at 165 and you've got all my data and I'm okay with it,
Yeah.
don't make me do extra hoops.
Yeah, I mean, that is for future discussion in terms of how do we get waivers. So for folks to automatically enroll in this program, to your point, why am I giving you the same information I've already gave someone else? If I'm approved for SNAP or HEAP or any of these other programs, I should automatically be approved for the utility assistance program.
You're at 200.
Yeah, trust me, there is a lot more work to be done there.
Understand.
I do want to call out the bond question again, because I want to make sure that we're clear about why we're going in this direction and not utilizing bond capacity that we have built up to just pay for the fourth water plant.
Sure. Councilmember Weich, and sir, that's a good question. And it's a tough, kind of complicated answer, I guess you could say. And I appreciate you kind of thinking about it and kind of diving into the details. But again, it gets back to really how are we saving residents money? So if you kind of look at it like we could use all the 500 million and we could add that 500 million to 1.5 billion to fund the water plant. Or we could take the 500 million and use it for other projects. The idea is that by using the loan program, our interest rates, so our principal and interest payments on that debt, on that contract is lower if we use the loan program.
Then if you went through the bond.
Right, so you're looking at probably an interest rate differential of between 5%, 2% would be the differential. You might get a 5% interest rate on the bonds, whereas you get almost a 3% interest rate on the loans. So if we structured, say, the water plant where we were used all the 500 million from the bond package and then 1.5 billion in the loans, we might have to increase rates even more, maybe to 20% to cover that added interest cost. So I don't know if that makes sense. It sounds like it might. So again, that's one of our major efforts whenever we are doing our rate modeling is to push everything in the lowest cost.
From a debt.
Yeah, from a debt standpoint.
Councilman White, thank you.
Mr. Lumpkin, thank you for being here and for your advocacy. So before I close up the hearing, sorry, we've already asked, there isn't anyone else who's interested in signing up. I will say, if folks want to review, and my apologies, we did get one written testimony from Mr. Joe Motil, who is sadly at a funeral, so I just want to let him know that our thoughts and prayers are with him. But his question was around capacity, right? We have not had any restrictions around drought time. Like, why do we need additional capacity if we're working within? And I think you touched on it a little bit in the presentation, but I want to make sure we can call that out and answer his question around why we're building capacity now when we currently aren't hitting our max, if that makes sense. And I can reiterate or just read verbatim what he wrote, if that's easier.
Sure. Councilmember White, that's a good question. So here recently with the drought that we've been in, we've not had to have any restrictions. So we've been feeding from our Doubt Reservoir, and there's been no disruption in customers' demand. And so, we plan for that. We plan for those drought conditions. We do not know what the future is going to be like. It seems like things are getting a lot drier. We've been in continued drought conditions for the last few years. If those continue, there's going to be continued pressure on our system, on our water supply system. So we're actually even looking at building additional reservoirs. That's part of the whole future look at our capacity. We don't know the source water that's coming down. It might not be there. So with these reservoirs, we've got that water in a reservoir that we can pump out to our plants and provide to our service population. Again, we don't know what the future looks like, and all of that capacity is part of the overall formula, and based on those projections for increased population of up to 3 million by 2050.
I appreciate that. His other question was really around the bond package again. We've had that dialogue quite a few times, so I think we're good there. But appreciate you answering this question and appreciate him continuing to advocate for the community. I will say, if folks would like to review any of the written testimony or the presentations we received today, they can visit my council webpage. My office only received one written testimony, but we'll make sure the presentations are up there as well. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, for walking through the presentations to talk about rates, talk about the aggregation program, but also talk about the Climate Action Plan. I know it takes a lot of work by the department and all the staff to kind of be prepared for this day. Thank you to the chair, the UAB members for the work that they do on a regular basis, working with our department to make sure that we can have some folks advocating for residents, right, as we have these discussions about rates and what they look like in the future. Obviously, to my colleagues who are able to join in attendance, I'm sure there'll be more questions for you, John. You've done an amazing job of answering them, but I'm sure there'll be more as we get a little closer to this being on the agenda, being on first and second reading. So thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. That is the end of our committee hearing this evening.